What do you know is true without evidence? What are you certain of, right down to your bones, without proof? There's a travel agency that's been around in my town for as long as I can remember. I wholeheartedly believe it's a front for the mob. You better keep quiet or you'll be taking an unexpected trip. I'm quietly convinced I made a best-selling mystery novelist change the way he writes because I criticized him on Reddit. The novelist in question is Chris Carter. The books are the Robert Hunter series. Yes, the guy who has built a career on looking for serial killers is named Hunter. He works for the LAPD's ultra-violent crime unit. It's not a series that's overburdened by subtlety, is what I'm saying. They are as schlocky a bunch of thrillers as you could ever hope to find. But for some reason I can't get enough of them, despite the fact that they're very much not great. They lean pretty damn heavy on ridiculous tropes, and I've never seen a more Mary Sue lead than I have in this series. But the biggest complaint I have with them is that the same line appears almost literally word for word in the first 9 books. I made a comment about it on Reddit on an r/books thread about your favorite terrible authors, and I went back through all of the books published so far just to prove my point. The Crucifix Killer. The famous line doesn't actually appear in this book as far as I could find, but Hunter does drink scotch near constantly as the defining trait of his character. Across the room a stylish glass bar looked totally out of place. It was the only piece of furniture Hunter had purchased brand new and from a trendy shop. It held several bottles of Hunter's biggest passion single malt Scotch whiskey. The bottles were arranged in a peculiar way that only he understood. And so it begins. The Executioner. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion. But unlike most people, he knew how to appreciate it instead of simply getting drunk on it. Note that in this one and the next Carter doesn't even use the Scottish spelling, whiskey, rather than whiskey, despite the fact that this is literally Hunter's only character trait. The Night Stalker. Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey, but unlike most, he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Death Sculptor. Hunter sat at the bar and ordered a double dose of 12-year-old Glendronach with 2 cubes of ice. Single malt Scotch whiskey was his biggest passion, and though he had overdone it a few times he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Hunter. Hunter's father had a passion for single malt Scotch whiskey. A passion that, frankly, Hunter had never understood. He found whiskey, any type of whiskey, way too overwhelming for his palate. I actually quite like this one. It's a prequel novella, so this one is a nice little meta throwback. It gets a pass from me. 1 by 1. Hunter would never consider himself an expert, but he knew how to appreciate the flavor and robustness of single malts, instead of simply getting hammered on them. Though, sometimes, getting hammered worked just fine. This is also the first appearance of the "but sometimes getting drunk works just fine, am I right?" addendum. It's nice to see Carter branching out a little, but after this he never looks back. An Evil Mind. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion. Unlike so many, he knew how to appreciate its palate instead of just getting drunk on it. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. I Am Death. Back in the living room, wrapped in a white towel, Hunter switched on a floor lamp and dimmed its intensity to medium. That done, he approached his drinks cabinet, which was small but held an impressive collection of single malt Scotch whiskey, which was probably his biggest passion. Though he had overdone it a few times, Hunter sure knew how to appreciate the flavor and quality of a good single malt, instead of simply getting drunk on it. The Collar. Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey. Back in his apartment, tucked in a corner of his living room, an old-fashioned drinks cabinet held a small but impressive collection of single malts that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. Hunter would never consider himself an expert on whiskey but, unlike so many, he at least knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality, instead of simply getting drunk on it, though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. The Collar also gets double points for helpfully informing us that women just don't get the subtle nuances of Scotch. Hunter tried not to frown at her again, but he was sincerely intrigued. Women in general weren't very fond of Scotch whiskey, which wasn't at all surprising. Whiskey was undoubtedly an acquired taste, one that at first would certainly overpower anyone's palate and knock the air out of their lungs in the process. Hunter knew that only too well. The trick was to persist, to keep trying, to keep sipping it until one day it finally made sense. Women usually weren't that patient with drinks. They either liked it at first sip or they didn't. This, by the by, is how we know that the woman in question is trustworthy, because reasons? Gallery of the Dead. Back in his apartment, Hunter had a small but impressive collection of scotch that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. He would never consider himself an expert, but unlike so many of his friends, who also claimed to enjoy single malt Scotch whiskey, he knew how to appreciate the flavors and robustness of the malts, instead of simply getting drunk on them. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. That post was made in January of 2019. In April, his book Hunting Evil came out, and the line was nowhere to be seen. I didn't think much of it until his new book, Written in Blood, came out a few days ago, and also didn't have the line in it. This comment is also one of the top answers if you Google his name and the book series via Reddit, exactly what you do if you were looking to see if people on the internet were talking about your books. I also can't find any evidence of anyone else pointing this out in a review or such like. So yeah. In short, 3 months after I made that comment, he broke the habit of a decade of writing and finally decided that after 9 stories that used this as a crutch for Hunter's personality, it was too much. I know you're reading this, Chris. I know. Reddit supermods have the ability to give unlimited free awards on Reddit. This allows them to make certain opinions more visible and normalizes paying real money for Reddit emojis. Edit. Whoever gilded this comment, your mom's a ho-ho. Edit 2. Fine, you win. You, Superdago, currently at 56 awards. I'm deleting this account if it gets to 69. Well, that's that. Be good to each other. My brother deleted my game save on purpose. He was old enough to read, he knew what he was doing. Most of this is just busy work. My sister ate the whole ice cream box without asking my parents. Edit. I'm sorry to disappoint you guys, but she didn't leave any ice cream. I don't know what happened to the box. That a lot more famous actors than we realize are secretly the children of other famous actors from the previous generation. I call it the Hollywood bastard theory. 100 years from now, only a handful of kids and grandkids will have any memory of my life. 200 years from now, at most I'll be a photo in an old family scrapbook with my name in the margin space. 300 years from now, no one in my family will know I existed outside of a half-finished family tree. Yet ultimately all of their hopes and pains, successes and failures, dreams and depressions will be the direct result of my having existed. So it isn't that bad. That gardening is the secret to happiness. Sounds super strange, especially coming from someone like myself, an ex-World of Warcraft gamer. I had kids, got busy with work, wanted out of the suburbs, got some land in the country, and started planting stuff. Years later I have what I call a food forest. I have replaced lawns with fruit trees, bushes, vines, flowers, all woven together to mimic a natural forest, except everything in it is edible. It has changed my life completely. I just think there's something about being outside in the sun, feet on soil, hands in dirt, planting shit. Watching it grow in the background of your life. Going out and checking on it and watching how much bigger it is getting. Watching life find it, and now you get to live with the natural world, not isolated from it. Birds making nests in your trees. Frogs making home in your ponds. Seeing bees all around your flowers, butterflies everywhere. Rabbits and squirrels moving in, then owls moving in to eat those. It's this wonderful trophic cascade that you started, and it's incredibly rewarding. Plus, being able to just walk outside and get chemical-free, nutrient-rich dinner is amazing. You can see my food forest in my post history if anyone is interested in seeing what I'm doing. I actually think a big reason depression is such a big thing these days is because we have all become so disconnected from the life that we evolved in for the last 6 million years. We evolved walking around savannas and forests, pulling food off bushes and trees, out in the sun, feet in the soil, hands in the dirt. We couldn't be further from that, living inside our isolated homes, cars and offices. It's no wonder we're all so depressed. I think gardening is the secret to happiness. Edit. Okay, wow, this blew up quickly. I will try to answer as many questions as I can, mini AMA style. That my cousin stole my holographic first edition Charizard Pokémon card back in the early 2000s. That my last boss secretly hated me even though we had, on the surface, a very positive relationship. Life on other planets. Not green one-eyes aliens but even insects and things like that. Burger King hash browns are just tater tots. That the near-complete absence of financial literacy education in American public schools is 100% on purpose. If I'm stuck in traffic and switch lanes because the other lane looks like it will move faster, the lane I just switched from will automatically go faster. That there is other intelligent life in the universe. We may never encounter it, certainly not within any of our lifetimes, but it's out there somewhere. The universe is too goddamn big for us to be the only ones. Edit. If you are reading this and thinking of making a joke about how humans are not intelligent, well, I'm sorry, but approximately 100 people have beaten you to it. Flat earthers are just doing it for attention. They really don't think the earth is flat. Y'all, the question says without evidence. Life exists outside of Earth. I can't imagine a universe where we are the only life. I'm really, really fucking lucky. But like in a subtle way, like if there's a 95% chance I'll get hurt doing something stupid, I'll come out unscathed. Sometimes I think there's a guardian angel watching over me, making sure I don't kill myself by being an idiot. Groot the tree could fall into a dumpster full of dicks and come out sucking his thumb. Déjà vu comes from previous dreams. That the entire U.S. mattress industry is a front for criminal organizations. Virtually every city has more mattress stores than it needs. When was the last time you bought a mattress? So then why does a city of 80,000 have like 7 separate mattress retail places within like 6 blocks? I completely agree that there is definitely something more to the mattress store industry. The 3 times in my life, since college, that I have bought a mattress, these stores are always standing empty of customers until I roll in. It almost feels Truman Show-esque where I stop through to browse and all of a sudden, 3 to 4 cast members come in as customers to maybe promote the positive vibes of buying a mattress. I could go on for far too long about this industry, it is so weird. There is some Godzilla shit at the bottom of our oceans. Deep sea gigantism will not fail me. Back when I was 10, there was a competition for schoolkids to write a treatment for an episode of Doctor Who, with the best one being developed into an full episode in the next series and the winner receiving a writing credit. I was a huge fan of DW at the time, and the competition was actually run through schools, so my teacher made the entire class do it, but I was very excited. I began writing a story about the Doctor landing on a planet full of defective Cybermen, whose programming had gone awry and had been left on this asylum planet to rot. The Doctor lands there in response to a mysterious distress call from a woman and attempts to find and save her while avoiding the dangerous dysfunctional Cybermen and the looming threat of planetary destruction at the hands of the normal Cybermen. I finished my short treatment and gave it to my teacher to submit. Unfortunately, it turned out the competition was very strict about the formatting of submissions and mine was returned because I had used the wrong formatting in some way. It seemed like a weird reason. I was a bit disappointed and that was the end of that. But then, a year or 2 later, there was an episode of DW called Asylum of the Daleks, which seemed incredibly similar to my story except with Daleks. So incredibly, eerily, similar in fact, that to this day I am absolutely convinced that Stephen Moffat saw my script and came up with a formatting excuse so that he could remove me from the competition, steal my story, change the bad guys and claim it as his own. I have zero evidence, I don't even still have the treatment I wrote, or any letter from the BBC about my submission, and yet I know in my bones that Stephen Moffat stole his script from 10-year-old me. My ex-boss used COVID as an excuse to make me redundant because I was the only member of his team to be hired by someone else and not him. Fuck that guy forever. My phone is listening to me. It's simply not a coincidence anymore how my targeted ads change directly related to and after a conversation. People say we are just more predictable than we think, but I mention something I haven't even thought about for years and there it is on Instagram. That the funeral home by my house is run by some sort of criminal organization. I always see the same gangster-looking guys hanging out in front of it smoking cigars and drinking beers. Does this funeral home have its own crematorium by any chance? Ozark has taught me that it can be a really convenient way to get rid of bodies. Not everyone is meant to raise a child.
Just because you can biologically create a child or financially support one does not mean you are meant to raise one. 1 in every 3 or 4 people is not capable of critical thinking. And I'm not making some kind of point about politics or anything. I mean those people are literally incapable of taking in information and synthesizing it with other information and coming to their own conclusions. They're basically robots programmed by whatever source is most convincing to them. I watched Flight 93 go down. I would never share that in real life because it's fucking grim and no one would believe you. The geography of the reports are off. I saw it clear as day from Kent State's main campus, Ohio. I didn't know what I was seeing other than I remember thinking, that plane is way too low. We had a aviation college so planes were common. And too big and it's jerking around like how a toddler drives a Power Wheels truck. Continued on to class. You don't want to be late even at a liberal college. What you almost certainly saw was it being taken over by the hijackers. During the hijacking, which was at 9:28 a.m., maybe a 9:30 class, during the takeover it was very jerky and lost a lot of altitude, and it took a while for the hijackers to stabilize it and get it under control and turn it around. Edit. If you look at the track of Flight 93, it likely would have been visible from the Kent State campus on its westward path. On its post-hijack return flight it passed farther south, over the top of West Virginia.